I didn't think much of it at first. I should have paid more attention, but I didn't. It was just a typical family dinner, nothing out of the ordinary, or so I thought. Then she said it. He's never going to get back on his feet. He's just too proud to admit it. My sister's voice cut through the noise of the dinner table, a careless remark, or so it seemed. But the way the others paused and turned to look at me, the way my mom's eyes flickered, it didn't sit right. It was like they were all waiting for me to crack, waiting for me to snap. But I stayed silent. I just kept eating, pretending it didn't bother me. But the truth is, it hurt. They didn't know I was listening. They didn't know I'd heard everything. I remember thinking, so this is what it's come to, huh? There's something about being written off by your own family that makes you realize how alone you really are. But it wasn't just that. It was the fact that I wasn't ready for what was coming next. I thought I'd been prepared for the worst. I thought I knew my family, but I was wrong. All I could do was sit there, feeling the weight of their words. My sister's voice had been the first shot. But it wouldn't be the last. In that moment, I knew something was off. I wasn't sure what it was, but something in the air had changed. I should have said something, I should have confronted them right then and there, but I didn't. I just let it hang there, like a dark cloud over the dinner table. It wasn't the first time I'd been put down in front of my family, but this time felt different. There was a certain finality in her words, something colder than usual. Maybe it was the way everyone nodded along with her, the way they all seemed to agree with her without question. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't ignore it. It was as if they had all decided that my failure was something they could laugh about, something they could use to make themselves feel better. And I was just sitting there, the joke, the punchline, the subject of their amusement. It wasn't even the things they said that hurt the most, it was the fact that they thought I wouldn't hear it. It was the fact that they thought I wouldn't notice. But I did. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't just about me. This wasn't about my money problems or my job or anything else. This was about something bigger. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I remember the feeling of my pulse quickening as I thought about it. I could feel the tension rising in my chest. And even though I stayed silent, I knew that wasn't the end of it. I wasn't stupid. There was more to it than just this casual insult. There was a game being played here, and I hadn't figured out the rules yet. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the way their eyes seemed to follow every move I made, waiting for me to screw up. But they didn't know me. They didn't know how long I could sit in silence, how long I could wait before I decided to fight back. What they didn't realize was that I'd been listening to every word, watching every move, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that I knew, deep down, that this was just the beginning. I could feel the pressure building, and I could see the way things were starting to unfold. I didn't have the full picture yet, but I was starting to see the edges of it. I was starting to see that this wasn't just a dinner. This wasn't just a family gathering. This was a battle. And I had no idea how deep it went or how far they were willing to go. But I would find out soon enough. The problem was, I didn't know how to stop it. I didn't know how to stop what was coming next. And I couldn't shake the feeling that everything I thought I knew about my family was about to change forever. I didn't say anything at first. I couldn't. I just sat there, quietly picking at my food, pretending to be unaffected by what my sister had said. But the silence in the room was thick, suffocating. I could feel the eyes on me, and even though I kept my gaze fixed on my plate, I knew they were all waiting for me to react. I could hear my mom's voice, soft but firm, "We're just worried about you, you know." But what she didn't say was just as loud. The unspoken message was clear: they didn't trust me. They didn't believe in me anymore. The tension at the table was rising, but I wasn't ready to explode. I wasn't ready to show them how much it hurt. Not yet. I had learned a long time ago to keep my emotions in check, to hide them behind a mask of calmness. So I played the role of the man who doesn't let anything bother him. But inside, something was changing. I wasn't sure when it happened, but I started noticing things. Little things. Like how my brother, Tom, was always subtly dismissive when I spoke about anything that mattered to me. It was as if he didn't even try to hide his lack of respect. He'd roll his eyes, laugh it off, and change the subject. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how everyone else just let it slide. Mom would give me that look, the one that said, "He's your brother. Don't make a scene." And then there was Dad. He was quieter than usual, as if he was just observing, waiting for something to happen. But I could tell. I could tell he didn't see me the same way anymore. It was like I was invisible to him, a shadow in the background of his life. Maybe it was because of the money problems, or maybe it was something deeper, but whatever it was, I knew I wasn't the son he used to be proud of. That realization hit me harder than I wanted to admit. It was like the entire family had moved on, leaving me behind. I was the one who had failed. I was the one who couldn't keep up. The guilt was suffocating, but I couldn't show it. I couldn't let them see me struggle. That's when I noticed the pattern. Tom would always make these little digs at me, always under the guise of, "Just kidding," but I knew better. He was testing me, seeing how far he could push me before I snapped. And the worst part? He wasn't the only one. It was like they all thought I was a joke. Every time they smiled, it was with that thin layer of judgment beneath it, as if they were all secretly glad to see me in this position. I wasn't just the screw-up. I was the punchline. And they didn't even realize they were doing it. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't care. I didn't know what was worse. The fact that they were subtly undermining me, or the fact that I was letting them get away with it. But then, one day, it happened again. This time, it wasn't just Tom. It was everyone. We were sitting in the living room, and someone brought up the family finances. My mom started talking about how they were planning to help Tom with his new business venture, but they didn't mention anything about me. Not a word. It was like I didn't exist. I could feel the heat rising in my face, but I didn't say anything. I just sat there, pretending like it didn't bother me. But inside, I was boiling. This wasn't the first time this had happened. It was like they were all assuming I would be fine, that I didn't need help, that I could figure things out on my own. But they didn't know. They didn't know how much I was struggling, how close I was to losing everything. I hadn't told anyone. Not my family, not my friends. No one knew that the pressure was starting to crush me. They didn't know that I was barely keeping it together. And then came the worst part. The part that I wasn't ready for. As the conversation continued, I could see my mom's eyes glancing at me, not with concern, but with judgment. And I realized then that it wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about Tom's business or my job. It was about something deeper. It was about control. They were treating me like I was incapable, like I was just another problem to be solved. I could see it in the way they looked at me, the way they spoke to me. They didn't see me as a man anymore. They saw me as a burden. It was at that moment that I knew something had to change. But what could I do? I couldn't confront them. Not yet. I wasn't ready. But I knew that I couldn't keep playing this part. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. The truth was, I was scared. Scared that if I confronted them, I would lose everything. Scared that if I stood up for myself, they would turn their backs on me completely. But I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't keep swallowing my pride and pretending it didn't hurt. So, I did what I always did, I stayed quiet. I let the tension simmer, knowing that it would boil over eventually. And I knew, deep down, that when it did, it wasn't going to be pretty. They thought I wasn't listening. They thought I didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. But I did. I heard everything. I saw everything. And I wasn't going to let it slide anymore. The question was, when would the time come to finally stop pretending? I could feel it building. The tension, the weight of their expectations, the judgment hanging in the air. It wasn't just a dinner anymore. It was a battleground. And I was stuck in the middle, too afraid to fight back, too scared to let them see how much they were breaking me. But it was getting harder to ignore. They were pushing me into a corner, one comment at a time, one little cut here, one little remark there. They didn't know it, but they were testing me, seeing how much I could take before I snapped. And I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold it together. It all started to come to a head one night, a few days after that dinner. I was at home, sitting on the couch, watching TV when I heard my mom and dad talking in the other room. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I never do, but it was impossible not to hear them. My mom was speaking quietly, but I could hear the frustration in her voice. "I just don't get it," she said. "He's so stubborn. He won't ask for help. He won't even try to fix things." My dad didn't say much, just a grunt here and there, but I could hear the disapproval in his silence. "You know he'll never admit it," my mom continued. "It's like he's too proud to acknowledge that he needs help. But he's getting worse. What are we supposed to do?" I could feel my chest tighten. It was like they didn't even see me. They didn't know the truth. They didn't know what I was going through. They didn't know that I was barely holding on. All they saw was the man they thought I was supposed to be. The man I used to be. The one who had it all together. But that man was gone. And the worst part was that I didn't know how to tell them that. How could I admit that I was failing when I had always been the strong one? The reliable one? The one who never needed help? How could I let them see how badly I was struggling? I didn't know if I was more angry at them or at myself. Angry that they couldn't see how much pain I was in. Angry that they still saw me as the person I used to be, not the person I was now. And the worst part was that I couldn't even talk to them about it. I couldn't even bring myself to say, "I'm struggling. I need help." Because in their eyes, I was still that guy who had everything under control. I didn't know how to let them see that I was falling apart. That night, I went to bed with the weight of their words still hanging over me. I couldn't sleep. The thoughts were swirling in my head, and I couldn't escape them. I kept hearing my mom's voice in my mind, saying, "He's so stubborn. He won't even try to fix things." And I couldn't get rid of the feeling that she was right. I wasn't trying to fix things. I was pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I was playing the role of the man who had it all together when, in reality, I was barely holding on. The next morning, I went to work like I always did. But it wasn't the same. I could feel the pressure building, the tension inside me rising. Every little thing was getting to me. The way my boss looked at me, like I wasn't good enough. The way my coworkers avoided eye contact, like they knew something was wrong but didn't know what to say. I could feel the walls closing in. It wasn't just my family anymore. It was the whole world. I was starting to feel like I was trapped in a cage, and no one could see it. That's when it happened again. Tom. He came into the office with that smug look on his face, the one that always made me feel like I wasn't good enough. "Hey, bro, how's it going?" he asked, like we were just catching up. But I could hear the mockery in his voice. I could see it in his eyes. He knew what I was going through, but he wasn't concerned. He was enjoying it. "Still struggling with that business thing?" he asked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I clenched my jaw, trying to hold back the frustration that was bubbling up inside me. "Yeah, it's been a tough year," I said, keeping my tone calm. But it wasn't calm. It was controlled, like a pressure cooker ready to explode. He laughed, that damn laugh. "You know, I'm surprised you're still trying. I thought you'd give up by now." I felt my blood boil. I wanted to say something, to tell him how much he didn't understand, to tell him that I wasn't giving up, but I couldn't. I just couldn't. Because if I did, it would be over. He would see me for what I really was, broken, defeated, weak. And I couldn't let that happen. Not yet. So, I stayed quiet. I smiled, nodded, and tried to pretend like everything was fine. But I was dying inside. I knew what he was doing. He wasn't just mocking me. He was testing me. Pushing me, seeing how far he could go before I broke. And I couldn't let him see it. I couldn't let anyone see it. But I was starting to realize that I couldn't keep pretending forever. The more they pushed me, the more I wanted to fight back. The more they ignored my struggles, the more I wanted to scream. But I didn't. I stayed silent, watching, waiting. I knew that at some point, I would have to confront them. I would have to confront the truth. But I wasn't ready. Not yet. I knew it was coming. I had been expecting it, but that didn't make it any easier. The tension at the dinner table had been building for weeks, maybe longer, and I had tried my best to ignore it. I had convinced myself that things would eventually calm down, that it was just a phase, but deep down, I knew better. I could feel the eyes on me, the subtle judgment from every corner of the room. And then, it happened. It was the night of my dad's birthday, and we were all gathered at my parents' house. The usual crowd was there, my mom, dad, Tom, and his wife, along with a few extended family members. The conversation was light at first, everyone trying to keep things friendly, but the undercurrent of tension was impossible to ignore. My mom had spent the last hour talking about all the good things that were happening in everyone's life, except for mine. She talked about Tom's business, how he was expanding and making real progress. She bragged about my younger cousin's promotion at work. But when it came to me, she glossed over everything. "He's doing all right," she said with a forced smile. "You know, figuring things out." And that was it. There was no mention of the struggles I had been going through. No mention of how hard I was trying to keep it all together. I could feel my blood boiling. My sister, Kelly, added her 2 cents, trying to be supportive, but it only made things worse. "It's tough, I'm sure," she said. "But you've always managed before, right? You'll get back on your feet." She didn't know what I was going through. She had no idea how close I was to losing everything. I had tried to keep it together, but every word they said made it harder. My dad didn't say anything, not a word. He just sat there, watching, observing, like he always did. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about my money, my job, or my business. This was about something bigger. This was about control. They thought they knew what was best for me. They thought they could handle my life better than I could. And that thought hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't just failing in their eyes, I was a failure in their eyes. It wasn't just about my financial situation anymore. It was about my entire existence. It was about who I was and who they thought I should be. And that's when it all came crashing down. It started with Tom. He leaned over to me, his voice low but full of mockery. "Hey, you doing okay?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I know. Things have been a little rough for you lately, but you've always been good at bouncing back, right?" I could feel the pressure rising in my chest, the words stuck in my throat. I wanted to say something, to tell him to shut up, to tell him that he didn't understand, that he never had to fight for anything. But I stayed silent. I couldn't give him the satisfaction. But I could feel the anger building. It was like a storm inside me, and I couldn't hold it back much longer. And then, it happened. My mom made the comment. "Well, you know, your father and I have been talking," she said, looking at my dad, who remained silent, as always. "We're thinking it might be time for you to reconsider some of your choices. Maybe look into a new job, or something more stable." That was it. The final straw. She wasn't even subtle about it. It was like she was telling me, in front of everyone, that I wasn't good enough. That everything I had worked for was nothing. I felt the heat rise in my face, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but I didn't. I couldn't. I didn't want to give them that satisfaction. But I was done. I was done pretending that everything was fine. I had been playing their game for so long, pretending to be the man they wanted me to be, and I was tired of it. I didn't owe them an explanation. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. But in that moment, I realized I had to do something. I had to stop pretending. I had to stop being their punching bag. The rest of the night passed in a blur. The conversations felt like background noise, like I was watching from the outside. My mind was racing, my thoughts scattered. I couldn't focus. All I could think about was how my family saw me, not as a man trying to get by, but as a failure. As someone who had fallen short. But I wasn't a failure. I wasn't. And I was going to prove it. It wasn't going to be easy. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to start somewhere. I had to take control of my life again. I had to. Stop letting them dictate my worth. That night, I stayed up late, thinking about everything. My past failures, my current struggles, and everything that had led me to this point. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let them break me. I was going to get back on my feet, not for them, but for me. It was time to stop pretending. It was time to start fighting back. But the question remained, how far was I willing to go to regain control of my own life? And more importantly, what would happen when I finally stopped playing along? I spent the next few days in a haze, my mind constantly replaying everything that had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was at play, something that I hadn't fully grasped yet. My family's behavior, their subtle judgments, the way they tried to control every part of my life, it all felt like a carefully constructed plan. But why? What were they really after? I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't just about me failing. There was something more to it. It wasn't until a few days later that the first real clue showed up. I was cleaning out my office, trying to get some semblance of order back in my life, when I found it. A letter. It wasn't addressed to me, but it was from my mom's lawyer. I hadn't seen it before. At first, I thought it was just some old paperwork, something I'd never need to deal with, but then something caught my eye. There, in the corner, was a line that made my heart drop, asterisk, the inheritance has been finalized and the decision will be made at the upcoming family meeting. Asterisk inheritance. That word hit me like a punch to the gut. I hadn't thought about it in years. But now, it all clicked. My family had always been obsessed with money, with the idea of keeping it all in the family, controlling every penny. And now it seemed like they were trying to push me out. I remembered the subtle hints my mom had been dropping for months, how they were worried about me, how I needed to make more stable choices. She had never once mentioned this inheritance, not directly, but now it all made sense. They weren't just trying to help me, they were trying to control me. And the more I thought about it, the more it became clear. They were setting me up for failure. I couldn't prove it yet, but I knew they were pushing me aside, making me seem like the irresponsible one, the one who couldn't manage his life. But why? Why would they want to make me look so bad? What was in it for them? It was a puzzle, and for the first time, I felt like I was getting closer to the answer. The next few days were a blur. I kept the letter hidden, not sure what to do with it. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. I wasn't sure how to handle this information. But I knew one thing, whatever this inheritance was, it was the key. It was the reason they had been treating me like this, the reason they were trying to push me out of the family. I wasn't just a disappointment to them, I was a threat. They were trying to cut me out of the equation, to control everything without me interfering. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how deep this went. My family wasn't just concerned about me failing, they were concerned about what I might discover. What I might find out if I kept digging. It was like they were hiding something important, and I was starting to piece it together. But I had to be careful. I couldn't let them know that I knew. Not yet. I had to keep playing along, keep pretending like everything was fine. I had to let the pressure build, let them think they were in control, until I was ready to strike. It was all about timing. The next family gathering was just around the corner, and I knew that would be my chance. It would be my chance to confront them, to finally expose the truth. I wasn't sure how I was going to do it, but I knew I couldn't wait much longer. I had to take control of my own life again. I couldn't let them decide my fate for me anymore. And the more I thought about it, the more determined I became. I wasn't going to be their pawn. I wasn't going to be their joke. I was going to show them that I could stand on my own 2 feet. I was going to take back what was rightfully mine. But as the day of the family meeting approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was going to happen. Something bigger, something I hadn't accounted for. I had my suspicions, but I wasn't sure what to believe anymore. The truth was out there, and I was getting closer to it, but I had to be careful. I didn't want to make a move too soon. But I also couldn't sit back and wait forever. I had to find a way to expose what they were really doing, to force them to face the truth. The only question was, how far was I willing to go to get it? I couldn't keep pretending anymore. The pressure was mounting, and the more I sat on the truth, the more it ate away at me. Every conversation, every glance, every subtle insult from my family, it was all coming to a head. I could feel the walls closing in, and I knew that sooner or later, I would have to act. But I wasn't sure how far I was willing to go. Every day leading up to the family meeting felt like a ticking time bomb. My mom, my dad, Tom, even Kelly, they all played their parts. They continued to act like everything was normal, as if they hadn't been discussing my failures behind my back. But I knew. I knew they were watching me, waiting for me to crack. They had been pushing me to my limit, but I was still standing. For now. But the anger inside me was growing. I had been taking their judgment for far too long. Every time they acted like I wasn't trying, like I didn't care about fixing things, I felt that anger build inside. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It was about respect. It was about my own worth. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. The night before the meeting, I found myself staring at the letter again. The one from my mom's lawyer. I had read it 100 times, but now it felt different. This wasn't just a letter about some family assets or financial arrangement. This was about power. They thought they could control my life by controlling the money, but I wasn't going to let them have that power over me. I had worked hard for everything I had. I had fought for everything I had built, and I wasn't about to lose it to their manipulation. It was time to take control back. The day of the family meeting arrived, and I could feel the anxiety in the pit of my stomach. This was it. The moment I had been dreading, and at the same time, the moment I had been waiting for. The house was quiet when I walked in, and I could hear the faint murmur of voices coming from the living room. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but my hands were shaking. This was the moment where everything would change. As I walked into the room, I saw them all sitting there. My mom, my dad, Tom, and Kelly. They were all looking at me, waiting for me to say something. The tension in the air was palpable. I could feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on me, but I wasn't going to let it break me. Not this time. I stood there for a moment, just taking it all in. The way they were all staring at me, the way they expected me to just fall in line. But I wasn't going to. I wasn't going to let them treat me like this anymore. I know what you've been doing, I said, my voice steady, but with an edge of anger that I couldn't hide. The room went silent. My mom looked at me with wide eyes, but I could see the guilt in her expression. Tom tried to hide his smirk, but I saw it anyway. Kelly's face was blank, but I could tell she knew something was coming. "You've been trying to push me out," I continued. "You've been setting me up to fail so that you can control everything. The business, the inheritance, everything." My mom opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Don't deny it. I found the letter. I know what's been going on." There was a long pause as everyone in the room processed what I had just said. I could feel the tension rising again, but this time, it wasn't coming from me. They were the ones on edge. "I've had enough," I said, my voice growing louder now. "I'm not going to be your pawn anymore. You don't get to control my life. I'm done letting you make me feel like I'm not good enough. I'm done letting you treat me like I'm the failure." My mom's face was a mixture of shock and guilt. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. She couldn't deny it anymore. I had exposed the truth, and now there was no going back. Tom, on the other hand, was starting to look uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, his usual smugness replaced with a look of unease. Kelly was the only one who seemed to be trying to stay neutral, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "You can't just throw this in our faces," Tom said, his voice rising. "You don't get to dictate how we run this family." I shook my head, the anger bubbling up inside me. "No, Tom. You don't get to dictate anything anymore. You've been running things behind my back, and I'm done letting you. If you think I'm just going to sit here and let you control everything, you're wrong. This is my life, and I'm taking control of it." I could see my dad, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, finally shift. He stood up, but he didn't say anything. He just watched me, like he was waiting to see what I would do next. The silence in the room was deafening. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the balance. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. This was the turning point. This was the moment when everything changed. The power had shifted. I wasn't the one being pushed around anymore. They were the ones who had to face the truth. And no matter how they reacted, I knew I had won. I had taken control of my life, and that was the first step toward taking back everything they had tried to take from me. I thought I was ready for whatever would come next, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened that day. The truth was out there, but the pieces didn't quite fit together yet. I had confronted my family, and for the first time in years, they had been forced to face what they had been doing to me. But what I didn't expect was the way they would react. The silence that followed my words was like a heavy weight on my chest. For a moment, no one said anything. My mom's face was pale, her eyes darting around as if she were searching for a way to explain herself, but there was nothing left to say. Tom was sitting there, his mouth slightly open, his usual cocky expression replaced by one of genuine surprise. I could tell he wasn't used to being caught off guard. He wasn't used to me standing up to him. Kelly was the only one who still looked calm, but I could see the flicker of guilt in her eyes. She hadn't been as involved in the manipulation, but she had seen it, and she had done nothing. That's when I realized something else. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about the inheritance or the family's control over my life. It was about the way they saw me, the way they underestimated me. They thought they had me figured out. They thought I was weak, that I was the failure they could push around. But they had underestimated how much I was willing to fight for my own life. I had made it clear that I wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. I wasn't going to let them keep running my life from behind the scenes. And as the silence dragged on, I started to feel the first real sense of power I had felt in years. It was like a light had been switched on inside me, and I wasn't afraid anymore. I could see the fear in their eyes. My mom, the one who had always been the voice of authority in our family, was finally speechless. Tom, the golden child, the one who thought he had all the answers, was suddenly at a loss for words. And my dad, he just stood there, his expression unreadable, but his silence said it all. He had always been the quiet one, the one who let everything slide, but now he was forced to confront the truth. My voice was steady, but I could feel the tension rising again. "You don't get to control me anymore," I said, looking directly at Tom. "You don't get to decide what happens with my life. You've done enough already." I saw his jaw tighten, but he didn't respond. It was like he didn't know how to react. My mom finally spoke, but her voice was shaky, filled with a mix of guilt and defensiveness. "I never meant for things to go this far," she said. "We just wanted what was best for you, but maybe we overstepped." The words felt hollow coming from her. This wasn't about wanting what was best for me. This was about control, about keeping the family legacy intact, about making sure I didn't disrupt their perfect little world. "You don't get to decide what's best for me," I shot back. "I'm an adult. I've been trying to do things my way, and every time I do, you step in and make it harder. You push me aside, and then you act like I'm the problem. But I'm not the problem. You are." The room went silent again. This time, it wasn't just my family that was quiet. It was me, too. I was finally saying the things I had been holding inside for so long, and it felt like a weight was being lifted off my shoulders. But even as I spoke, I could feel the dread creeping in. The guilt. The uncertainty. I didn't want to lose my family, but I couldn't keep living like this. I had to stand my ground. "I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself," I continued. "I'm done being your scapegoat. I'm done being the one you can push around whenever things don't go your way. I'm done." There was a long pause. Then, finally, my dad spoke. "You think we've been controlling you?" he asked, his voice low and steady, but with a hint of something else, something I couldn't quite place. "You think we've been trying to ruin your life?" His words stung, but I wasn't going to back down. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice calm but firm. "And I'm done letting it happen. I've been struggling for so long, and I've tried to figure things out on my own, but you've made it impossible. You've been pushing me, pulling me in every direction, and I'm tired of it." There was no more pretending. No more playing along with their version of things. For the first time, I felt like I was finally seeing the truth. And the more I spoke, the clearer it became. They didn't just want to control my finances or my career. They wanted to control my entire life. My decisions, my choices, my future. And I wasn't going to let them. My mom's face softened, just a little. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice quieter now. "We just wanted to keep things together. We thought it would be easier if we did it this way." I shook my head. "That's the problem. You've been making decisions for me, without even asking me what I want. And it's time for that to stop." I could see the guilt in their faces now, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had finally gotten through to them. They didn't like it. They didn't like being challenged, but they couldn't deny the truth anymore. My truth. I wasn't sure what was going to happen after this. I didn't know if my family would ever be the same. But I knew one thing for sure, I had taken back control. I had exposed the truth, and now it was out in the open. It wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. It wasn't just about money or business. It was about respect. It was about me finally standing up for myself, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had the power to shape my own future. But as I walked out of the room that day, a new question lingered in my mind: what would they do next? How far were they willing to go to keep their control, and how much more would I have to fight to keep my freedom? The silence in the room felt suffocating, heavier than it had ever been. I could see it on their faces, the realization that things weren't going to go their way anymore. The way they were looking at me, it was as if they were seeing me for the first time. They were finally starting to understand that I wasn't the same person I had been before. I wasn't the weak, passive son or brother they could push around. I was something else now. Something they hadn't accounted for. They thought I would crumble under their pressure, that I would back down when they showed their disapproval. But I hadn't. I stood my ground, and I wasn't going to let them take control anymore. My mom's eyes softened slightly, but there was still a defensiveness in her posture. She crossed her arms, like she was trying to protect herself from the truth I was throwing at her. "You don't understand, it's not that simple," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "We just wanted to help you. We thought we were doing what was best for you." But I could hear the hollow ring of her words. She wasn't convincing anyone, not even herself. "No, Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You weren't trying to help me. You were trying to control me. You thought if you kept me in the dark, if you made the decisions for me, I'd just fall in line. But I'm not falling in line anymore." I paused, taking a deep breath, knowing this moment was crucial. "I've spent my whole life trying to please all of you. Trying to make everyone happy. But what about me? What do I want? What have I needed? You've never asked, because you didn't care. You just cared about the picture of the family you had in your head, not the reality of who I am or what I'm dealing with." The room was still. No one moved. It felt like time had stopped, and I was standing there, holding my ground, watching as the reality of my words sank in. I could see my dad's face harden, his jaw tightening like he was trying to suppress the anger that was bubbling up. "We did what we thought was right," he said, his voice low and steady, but there was something in the way he said it that made me feel like I had just hit a nerve. "You think we want to control you? We just didn't want to see you fail." But I wasn't buying it. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, the frustration creeping into my voice now. "You didn't see me as someone who could make their own decisions. You saw me as a problem. You saw me as a failure waiting to happen. You never even gave me a chance to prove myself." I could see the guilt creeping into my dad's eyes, but he wasn't going to admit it. "Not now. Not here." "I'm sorry," he said quietly, as if the apology was something he was just trying to get through, something he thought would make everything better. But I wasn't ready to let it go that easily. "Sorry," I repeated, my voice cold. "Sorry doesn't cut it. You've been controlling my life for years, and now you want to throw a sorry at me and think everything will magically be okay." The anger inside me was reaching a boiling point, but I knew I had to stay calm. I couldn't let them see me lose control. Not now. Not after everything I had said. "You're right," my dad said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "We have been trying to control everything. But we did it because we were scared. Scared of losing you. Scared of watching you fail." I shook my head. "You weren't scared for me. You were scared of what it would mean for you. You were scared of losing your perfect little family dynamic, where everything fit neatly into place. But that's not me. I'm not a part of your perfect picture. And I'm not going to keep pretending to be." My mom looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before: vulnerability. It was only there for a moment, but it was enough. Enough to make me realize that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. "I thought I was helping. But I can see now that I wasn't. I didn't know how to respond to that. I wanted to say something, to offer comfort, but I couldn't. The truth had been laid bare, and there was no going back now. The damage had been done. But it was done on both sides. They had hurt me, yes, but I had hurt them too. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something new. For all of us. I don't know if we can fix this," I said, the weight of my words settling over me. "But I can't keep living like this. I can't keep letting you make decisions for me. I need to find my own way. I need to figure out who I am outside of this family dynamic, outside of your expectations." There was a long silence as everyone processed what I had said. I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of everything. unsaid between us. And then, my dad spoke again. Maybe you're right, he said, his voice rough but sincere. Maybe we've been too hard on you. Maybe we've been trying to protect you in ways that didn't work. We can't keep controlling your life. We need to trust you to make your own decisions. His words were a start. A small start, but a start nonetheless. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be a quick fix. But at least it was something. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had the power to shape my own future. The truth had been exposed, and now I had to figure out what to do with it. I wasn't sure where this journey would take me, but I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let fear control me anymore. The days after the confrontation were a blur. Everything felt different. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, but there was a strange sense of relief too. For the first time, I felt like I had finally stood up for myself, like I had finally made my voice heard. But as the initial shock wore off, I was left with a strange emptiness. My family had heard me, yes, but would things really change? I didn't know. It was hard to shake off the years of conditioning, the patterns that had been set in place for so long. I still wasn't sure how everything would unfold. Would they truly let me go, or would they continue to try to control me from the shadows? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend like everything was fine, like nothing had happened. The truth was out, and there was no taking it back. The aftermath of that meeting was strange. My mom tried to reach out, sending me texts, leaving me voicemails, but I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. I needed space. I needed to figure out what I wanted, what I needed, without the noise of their expectations clouding my judgment. Tom sent a few half-hearted texts, asking if I was okay, but I didn't reply to those either. I wasn't sure I could trust him yet. It wasn't like the old days, when we would talk about everything and anything. There was too much history between us, too many years of resentment and manipulation for me to just let it slide. I couldn't pretend like everything was okay with him. The one person who had been different was Kelly. She was the only one who seemed to understand, the only one who didn't try to push me or guilt me into anything. She reached out a few times, offering to talk, but she didn't pressure me. And for the first time, I actually took her up on it. We met for coffee a week after the family meeting. It was strange at first, sitting across from her, knowing everything that had been said. But as we talked, I started to realize that Kelly wasn't the enemy here. She had always been stuck in the middle, caught between me and the rest of the family. She had never been the one to control, but she had always gone along with it. And now, I could see that she was beginning to realize how much damage that had caused. "I'm sorry," she said, looking genuinely remorseful. "I didn't realize how much you were hurting. I thought I was helping, but I was just going along with everything. I should have been there for you, but I wasn't." Her words caught me off guard. I hadn't expected her to apologize, but in that moment, it felt like a weight lifted off my chest. "It's not just you," I told her, the tension in my voice finally starting to ease. "It's all of us. We've all been playing this game for so long, pretending everything is fine. But it's not. And I don't want to do it anymore. I want to find my own way." She nodded, understanding the gravity of what I was saying. "I get it," she said. "I really do. And I'm here, whenever you're ready to talk or whatever you need." It was the first real moment of connection I had felt in a long time. The rest of my family had been so caught up in their own plans, their own control, that they had completely overlooked what I needed. But Kelly wasn't like that. She wasn't trying to control me. She wasn't trying to push me into a mold I didn't fit into. She was just there, offering her support, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe there was still a way forward. The rest of the week passed in a haze. I spent more time on my own, reflecting on everything that had happened. I had felt like I had finally taken control of my life, but now the hard part was figuring out what came next. The truth had come out, and the family dynamic had shifted, but what now? How would things look from here? I knew it wasn't going to be easy. My family wasn't going to change overnight, and I wasn't going to be able to fix everything in one conversation. But I had taken the first step. I had stood up for myself. And that was more than I had done in years. As I sat in my apartment, thinking about all of this, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I felt relieved, yes, but I also felt lost. The future was uncertain, and I didn't know what was waiting for me. But for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I had taken my life back, and no one could take that from me. I wasn't going to let fear control me anymore. I wasn't going to let anyone dictate my future. And maybe, just maybe, that was the start of something new. The next few months were a whirlwind. Things with my family didn't magically get better, but they didn't get worse either. We all took time to process, to reflect on everything that had been said. My mom and I talked more openly, and though there were still moments of tension, we were starting to understand each other better. I still wasn't sure where things stood with Tom, but that was okay. I didn't need his approval anymore. I had come to terms with the fact that I had to live my life for myself, not for anyone else. I was finally starting to see the person I wanted to become. And even though I didn't have all the answers yet, I knew I was on the right path. It wasn't easy, and it wouldn't always be clear, but I had taken the first step. I had found my voice, and that was all I needed to keep moving forward.